Hey people, what's happening? What's happening on this Friday night? Jump on today, talk a little bit about what you really can or cannot do with Bubble. I get this question quite a bit. What can Bubble do? What can you do with Bubble? It's a funny question. It's hard to answer. There's really not a lot that you can't do with Bubble. And somebody wrote an article, Thomas Groke, in September of 2020, which is 2 years ago. And he kind of outlined it. It was one of the best, honest summaries of what, the limitations of Bubble and what it's meant to be used for. And I thought it was a good read. So what I'm going to do is just read through that tonight and kind of react to it. I think it's funny to see. I think it's interesting to see what has kind of changed since then too, because the platform has changed a lot in 2 years. So some of these things may still be true, some of them may not be true. Um, that's the interesting thing, and I think it's kind of interesting also when people write Bubble off because it doesn't have a specific feature that they would expect in a development environment. But that doesn't mean that whatever it is that you expect is not on the horizon. The platform, even though it's 2012, platform's 10 years old already. That's crazy. That's kind of crazy. But it's still growing. It's still improving. They're still making changes. It is kind of hard to believe that it's a technology that's 10 years old. In tech, that's a lifetime. Because it feels so new. It feels like it's still being discovered and hasn't quite been adopted by mainstream technologists, I would say, yet. And I don't know. It just still feels like a secret, and most people have heard of it. If you're in the software space, most people have heard of it at the very least. But it's still not what the founders envisioned of being the default way of building software. And you can argue why that is. I have a few thoughts on that, and I guess we can get into that tonight. I'd like to hear what other people are thinking too on why hasn't Bubble hit the mainstream yet. Right? It still hasn't. It's still kind of this underground band that's bubbling under the surface, trying to catch its big break. It's just what it feels like. And it's kind of crazy that after 10 years that still is the case. And I found out about Bubble in 2017. So I've been working in Bubble in 20 since 2017 on and off, right? I didn't go gung ho as soon as I found it, but I would say play with it for about 2 years, 2017 and 2018, until I really got serious about it in mid 2019, when I actually did quit my job to pursue this career path. So let's take a look. Let's take a look at the article. Now, again, this is from 2020. So the platform has changed since then. So I want to kind of compare what was said about it back in 2020 against, what we see now, and does it hold up? Thomas Groke wrote this in September 4th, 2020. And I remember when I read it, it was pretty accurate at the time. All right, so since its beginning in 2012, Bubble has never stopped making its low-code tool. It's interesting that they called it a low-code platform here. Bubble kind of self-defines as this no-code, the leader in the no-code movement, but low-code is a more accurate way to describe it. Platform evolved and refining its features largely thanks to the many to the many feedback the team gathered from the community. Today, Bubble is a full-stack platform that supports large and complex software projects. As a Bubble agency, we're often asked questions on the capability of the platform. Now, this coming from a Bubble agency, I suppose we have to be a little bit skeptical about, what light they're going to present Bubble in. The agencies that are relying on Bubble as their main tool are not going to talk a lot of shit about it, right? So let's consider the source. But we'll see. I'm going to be as honest as I can on whether or not I agree with the things that are in this article. But I'm always skeptical of the source, right? Who is the source that you're getting this information from? The list below describes honestly what you can't do with Bubble technology. So far, good. I like that he puts this caveat in here, so far, because, again, the platform's always changing. So you can validate if it's the most suitable platform for your project needs. Well said. Well said. Okay. Build responsive web apps. Bubble is one of the most advanced visual programming environments to build robust web apps. I do like visual programming better than no code. I heard a great conversation between Jacob and Peter Emile from Norway. They did where Jacob was interviewing Peter about Bubble security and about the ultimate guide to Bubble security, which is great. If you are in Bubble, you should read this 100%, because as much as we like to ignore security until the last moment before we launch, he kind of lays out in this. It's not a great practice. So that guide definitely helped me make my apps more secure, and it gave me more confidence, because I wasn't paying attention to privacy rules. I ignored privacy rules until the last minute. That's how I was doing it before. And it's just not the way to go, because what winds up happening is that you get far, you build a lot of functionality out, and it works, and then you start messing with the privacy rules, and then there's all these dependencies that you have to rethink. So check out, if you are building in Bubble, you should check out The Ultimate Guide to Bubble Security by Peter Emile. Very important. Anyway, my point there was that he argues that both visual programming and no code are really not the best way to describe Bubble, either or. And I don't think we really have. And I agree with him in that we haven't really found the proper word to encompass what Bubble and these platforms are. Low code, no code, visual programming. I think he said something very smart where no code, you shouldn't describe something by the absence of something else, right? Like no code, it tells you what it isn't. It doesn't tell you what it is, though. So I like that method. I like that thought process, and I don't think that we have nailed what to call this thing yet. Either you want to create a desktop or responsive web application that fits any screen size, you can probably do it with Bubble. Let's keep in mind that this was written in 2020, prior to the new responsive engine coming out. So, yes, you can create a desktop responsive web application that fits any screen size, but it was goddamn difficult. It was very difficult, especially if you were trying to do it on the same page. I think even now, honestly, when I still tend to build, like, if we're going to have a page that's just mobile, or have an app that has both a mobile and a desktop component to it, I tend to want to build those on separate pages, even with the new responsive engine, because I hate figuring out how to all of the conditions needed to hide elements on a screen. It's just more work. It's just way too much work. I think maybe between 1200 pixels, or 1200 and up, down to maybe the size of an iPad, like 900 pixels, 1000 pixels. That's one page. And then below 900 all the way down to 320, which is usually the minimum size of a smartphone, that is done, on a separate page. Argue with me though. If you're watching this, throw something in the chat and tell me if you have a better way to do it. But that's been my preferred way. Typical examples of applications that can greatly build on Bubble. There is a bit of proofreading that needs to happen here. Built on Bubble are social networks, software as a service, or SaaS marketplaces. Yes, a lot of people build marketplaces. We love our goddamn marketplaces. My God. It's the hardest. I have to say that building a marketplace is probably the most, or two-sided marketplace, I should say, is probably one of the most difficult things to do, because you have to build it for two people, two different user types, and it doesn't work unless both people are on the platform at the same time. So say you're building a job market. You have to have both employers and employees. How are you going to get one or the other if not at the same time? You have to have a very creative strategy for attracting both users to use your platform at the same time. I'm talking about the beginning, right? There's got to be some network that you're plugged into that you can test this idea with and grow it out from there. Two-sided marketplaces suck. They suck. Yet we love them. Everyone seems to love building these goddamn things. I've just seen so many app ideas that are two-sided marketplaces, and every time I hear it, I'm just like, ugh, why? Why are we still doing this? I guess they're needed. I don't know. Okay, Bubble Editor offers a wide flexibility that allows experienced developers to achieve pixel-perfect products with complex designs and responsive requirements. Yes, very true. Again, true, but keep in mind that this was written before the CSS Flexbox based engine in Bubble, so this was very difficult to accomplish on the fixed page without any page structure, where they just kind of let you drop elements on the page wherever you wanted to. Very difficult to make responsive. As we introduced the news in our last Medium article, our team have built an installable web application, PWA, on the Bubble platform. Basically, it's a minimalist clone of Uber deployed in days with 100% no-code plus code mixture. So I guess this is their version of Uber that they built. Aber, which looks very good. Certainly looks like Uber. And they built it on Bubble, and they're claiming in days, which is impressive. You know, this looks a lot like Uber. I don't know where you would get this. Let's see if we can find Aber, not Abercrombie. Aber app, and then the name of the development agency is Cube, I think. Co-founder Cube. We've cracked the mobile apps development. Trying to find the link to their editor here. There we go. Uber.copycat.io. We'll shrink it down to responsive here. Oh, look, they've got the push notifications. We'll subscribe to those. Oh, Jesus. I already regret doing that because I'm going to get some notifications now. Not available in demo. Where do you want to go? 1, 2. Let's see if they... Go to one of my old addresses. Doesn't seem like it's auto-finding, but that's probably just because the Google API key is expired or something. I mean, but visually this looks pretty good. You know, if I logged into this, you know, if I launched Uber and saw this, I wouldn't really notice that this is not Uber. You know, maybe this font looks a little strange, but this is pretty good. You know, if I was getting a ride, if I was looking for a ride, I launched Uber and I saw this, I probably wouldn't think anything about it. I would just think I was on Uber. So, well done. If you did this in days, Thomas Grok, that is impressive. All right. Where was I here? PWAs are easily installable one click with Android device, making it accessible from the home screen just like any other application. This is extremely beneficial for startups or companies looking to save costs on developing a native mobile application for both Android and iOS. Additionally, a membership for the Apple Developer Program will not be needed. So I'm not really sure what the difference. Progressive Web App. I guess it seems like progressive web apps are installable on your phone, right? What he's saying here, but how does that differ? I guess you don't need to upload it to the iOS and Google stores, to the Play stores. That's pretty cool. If that's what a PWA is, if it kind of circumvents the need to get approved by the app stores, that's pretty cool. That's a good option, because I was saying even yesterday that I really hope that the future is without the app stores, so we don't have to be giving our revenue share to Apple, right? I don't like that. I don't like that. And just the idea of having to get your app approved by the app stores just so you can use it on your phone is just a little obnoxious to me. It's like, why do we need Apple's approval? Why do we need Apple's approval to use software? Right? I get it, because, I'm sure there's going to be some malicious developers out there that are, putting out crap apps that are just going to steal your information. And, to that security point, I suppose there's some merit to that. But I would love a world where people can just go to any web browser, go to the app that solves the problem for them, and we don't have to be uploading things to the we don't have to ask Apple and Google for approval to do that. So I hope the future goes in that direction. This is extremely beneficial for startups or companies looking to save on the cost of developing a native. Oh yeah, I already read that. Sorry. I mean, but I don't know if I necessarily agree with this part, because I mean, BDK Native pretty much has this sorted out, right? BDK Native. You give them your Bubble app. You build all of your the functionality, mobile native functionality that you want in your app through their plugin, right? You build that with their plugin first. You tell them when you're ready, and then you pay them like $300, and they build you a APK that you can upload to the app stores. They've kind of figured this out, so it's not really, maybe this wasn't as popular in 2020, but it's a pretty Travel Trunk. This is a company that I've worked with. 1,000+ forward-thinking bubblers. Look, this is specifically for Bubble. That's pretty cool. I'm trying to see if I know any of these. Travel Trunk is the only one that I know here. I've worked on Travel Trunk. I don't think I know any of these other companies. But yeah, I mean, like, you can argue that they've done a good job with this. Garab, I think his name is. He's done a really good job with BDK. It's definitely my go-to. I've actually, I've gone through the pain of figuring out how to actually build an APK in Xcode and what the hell is the Android one's name? Android Studio and Xcode, and it was obnoxious. It was a pretty lengthy process to figure it out. Once you have it, once you understand how to do it, it takes like 5 minutes. It's really easy to do. But I never figured out how to, like, access the camera on your phone in Android Studio. That would have just taken a long time to figure all of that, like that navigation stuff out. We figured out basically just how to build a basic APK out of the Bubble app using JSONnet, which was known as a wrapper, and then uploading that to the app stores. And we actually put the tutorials out on YouTube, in the YouTube on my YouTube channel. If anyone's interested in that, let me know and I'll drop it in the chat. But it's once you have that, it's fairly straightforward. But once I found BDK, and there's like the push notifications that you can do, access to the camera, all of the geolocation stuff. I'm trying to think of other things that you can do with BDK. But once you see how much they can do, it really doesn't make any sense to do it yourself. Pay the $300 and save yourself hours and hours of work, unless you really are interested in learning how to work in Android Studio and Xcode, I wouldn't do it. It's you really got to know what you're doing in there. Um, you definitely do have to buy an Apple developer and Google. This is $100 a year if you want to upload your apps to the Apple iOS store, or if you want to, Google's like $25 a year, I think. So there is a cost to that, but it's pretty cheap. Manual updates and maintenance are a thing in the past with PWAs. Since the applications are served by a web browser, there is no need to update the application manually through the App Store or activate and setting up the application automatically. Let's talk about this. This is actually very interesting. So I think that one advantage that Bubble has over like writing in Swift for iOS is that any changes that you make to the app, they happen automatically, even if they're installed, even if these APKs are installed on people's phones. So for example, if I'm building a job board, right? I'm just going to use that as an example. I'm building a job board and I've uploaded that to the app stores, both Google and Apple. And they're already installed on people's devices. People are using this app. Anytime I make a change, say I want to build out a new feature for the employer side or whatever, when I change that feature, build that feature in Bubble, and then launch that to the live environment, everyone's phone, everyone's application, anyone who's using that app, it automatically gets updated. You don't have to go back to the app stores for approval. You don't need to resubmit a new version of your app to the app stores, which is great, right? Like if you were coding it in the traditional way, you'd be having to set up different, versions of your app for approval, which is annoying, right? Every time you make a change, you want to just get it out there as fast as possible, especially if it works, people are asking for it. So I think that's a huge advantage, not having to resubmit to the App Store. The only time you need to, BDK calls it a rebuild. The only time that you need to do a rebuild is when you want to change the information that's actually on the App Store. Like if you want to change the screenshots or you want to change the description of your app that Apple is displaying, you'll need to do a rebuild and they'll update that information for you. But it's few and far between. No one reads that shit anyway. So I don't know why anybody would want to update that. All right, if you know which app you're looking for, what do? You go to the App Store, you click it, you download it, and you don't think about it. I'm not reading the description of the app. Maybe you look at the reviews, but that's it. No one cares about the screenshots or whatever. Apple is notoriously they like to reject. The last time we uploaded one, it didn't get rejected, which I was surprised about. The first one that we did got rejected like 3 or 4 times, and it was silly stuff like the screenshot was the wrong size, and the description was missing something minor. So they tell you what's wrong, and then you just fix it, and then you resubmit it, and it gets approved eventually. You may go back and forth a few times, but it's not. If Apple rejects your app for the first time, it's not the end of the world. You just got to kind of resubmit it again. PWAs are small in size compared to their native counterparts. PWAs allow users to seamlessly add them to their home screen, and since the size of the application is minimal, there is no waiting time for the user to continue using a PDA. I keep saying PDA. Are PWAs any different in size than the mobile wrapped application? It's still going over HTTP. It's still really in a web browser. It's not really installed on your device. So I don't know if it's any lighter. Maybe it is. I'm not sure about that. PWAs are great for SEO and bring more independence from application stores, risk of ban, high commissions for in-app payments. This is exactly what I'm talking about here. High commission, in-app payments. Like you have to pay Apple 25%, I believe it is, of your in-app purchases, and you have to have that set up, or they if it's a paid app, or they won't approve you, right? That's crazy to me. That's Big Brother kind of taking your money. So I don't like it. SEO. I want to talk about SEO for a second. I hear this a lot where Bubble is not built for SEO. And for those of you that don't know what that is, search engine optimization, that your Bubble app will rank well, will perform well in a Google ranking, in the search engine. I don't know that you necessarily need to rank, like, your website may or may not be built on Bubble, but I've always thought, I've never thought of Bubble as a website builder, right? Like a Wix or a Card, or I've never thought of it that way. I don't like building websites on Bubble. I like building apps on Bubble, but I don't think the Bubble is the best tool for building websites. In fact, probably my favorite would be Card or Webflow. Those are beautiful. If you know how to use Webflow, you can make some really beautiful websites. But for example, let me just show, like, Melon Seed. This is an app that we built. This is the Bubble site, right? This is where you would actually go to the App Store and get it built, or rather download it to your phone. But melonseed.co, this is the website, right? This is like the landing page that you would go to, and this is what you would promote, for search engine optimization, right? Like, if you build your site, Webflow specifically is designed for, like, web pages and site ranking, and marketing is kind of built into their core product. So it makes more sense to build your website there and then just have a link on that site point back to the place where people can access your app in the web browser. So I don't know. For those of you that are complaining that Bubble doesn't do well with SEO, I don't think it's supposed to, right? I don't think that was the intention. They built some SEO features that I've never really taken the time to learn, because I just never thought of that as being the tool for that kind of thing. But yeah, like this, you can see, like, this is a pretty page, right? I didn't build this, but this is a pretty page. And then if you want to download this is what you market, and you build your SEO on this page. And then if you click download here, it just takes you directly to the Bubble site, melonseed.app. And it doesn't really feel like you've gone to a different site necessarily, but we know that, if all the marketing is the same, and the color schemes, it just, for the user, it just feels like they went to a different page on the same site. So that's my thought on that with the SEO stuff. Honestly, unless your project requires deep native features, see full list of features available in your current web browser. Web PWAs native fields should do the work on most cases. Good to know. Good to know. Good to know. It is always possible to transform your web app or PWA into a hybrid application, allowing it to be easily deployed to application stores, Android and Play stores. I've never built a PWA. I've never built a PWA, so I don't know. I don't know if this is true. At Cube, we have recently introduced a dedicated service to convert any Bubble app into an installable and optimized progressive web app within 72 hours. I suppose a PWA is just like a piece of software, like the way that you would normally install, like, Microsoft Office on your desktop. It's kind of like a software suite that you install. I mean, I very rarely do that anymore, surprisingly. Like, I don't have that many. I have Slack. If I'm looking along the bottom of my screen here, I have Slack. I have Discord installed. I guess I have a few. No, I do have a few. Loom. I don't know what the fuck's going on with Loom. Loom has been, like, every time I try to launch Loom, the desktop version, it eats up all of my computer's memory, and the computer just starts running slow. I either have a shit computer or Loom changed something because I can't get it to run anymore. I don't know what that's about. If anyone else is having that problem, please talk to me because I don't know. I don't know what the issue is. I can't figure it out. And I loved Loom. It was saving me so much time in meetings, and now I can barely use it because it seems like such a heavy application. I don't know. What was I saying? Oh yeah, because the PWA. So it seems like that's just that version. It's like a PWA is just an installable installable software that you can that you don't need to get approved by the App Store. So maybe the PWA is the progressive web app is the alternative to having to go through the app stores, which is cool. You know, like that's the way to go. I've never built one, but if anybody has, I'd like to talk to you because I want to see what that's about. All right, now we get into the what you can do, right? These are the things that Thomas is saying that Bubble can do. To date, Bubble does not offer out-of-the-box solution for native applications. While this project seems to be planned in their long-term roadmap, I don't think this is. I don't think that Bubble is ever going to get around to this. They have so much other stuff that they're focused on, and I've heard Emmanuel say more than once that he hopes the future is web apps, not mobile. So I don't see this happening anytime soon. It is still, and this was 2 years ago, and it hasn't happened. It is still possible to create hybrid mobile apps with a Bubble editor by wrapping web applications and publishing to the app stores. Yeah, that's what we just talked about. That's basically what BDK does. Again, I think BDK is the best at this. So if you are building a mobile native app, check out BDK Native. It's worth the money. Hybrid apps offer a great advantage for developers who wish to update their app frequently and not necessarily resubmit the new version. You don't need to resubmit the new version on the App Store. If you're just making some minor changes to the app, not even if you're making any change, if you're making major changes, you don't need to resubmit to the App Store. The App Store doesn't really know the changes that you make, which is actually kind of interesting if you think about it, because in theory, you could submit one application to the App Store, say that it does a certain thing, and then change it. Like, is Apple reviewing these on an ongoing basis to see that, your description matches what you had originally submitted? I don't know. I don't know how thorough they are with that. But in theory, like I say, you could submit to them one thing and then make crazy changes, and they wouldn't really know because, again, all of those changes go out live. When you deploy the changes from your Bubble app, it changes the application for all the users that have it installed on their phone because it's over the internet. It's over HTTP. It's not a locally hosted app on their phone, even though it appears that way. So I don't know. I don't know anybody that's done that, but it'd be kind of an interesting test to see if Apple catches that. I say Apple mostly because Google doesn't seem to give a shit. Apple's the one that's very picky. Additionally, as hybrid mobile apps are powered by web technologies that can be deployed across both. Yeah, we know. Okay, also hybrid and mobile apps provide access to more permissions and native features than web applications PDA, such as contacts, biometrics, smart login. Yeah, sure. There is an excellent plugin to transform optimized web apps into native. BDK Native. There you go. I've been saying BDK Native, and there it is. Gaurav Jain. Okay, run custom code. Exciting. No code native, and this is why I don't like the name no code. Literally, the name of this section is run custom code, and we're talking about no code here, right? You still need code. You don't need code, but you're going to benefit a lot from knowing JavaScript if you're working in Bubble. No code native capabilities of Bubble are impressive. Indeed, Bubble provides a lot of native features to build powerful web applications. But in some cases, visual language is not the most adapted way to build a feature or achieve a specific action. This is very true. I've had to implement custom code in a few of my applications. because it was just too difficult to figure it out with Bubble. I think I'm actually going to have to do that again soon. I need to calculate quartiles. I cannot calculate quartiles in Bubble. I've tried using the simple list calculator. I have to use multiple of those, and I can't get the lists to line up where they're accurately calculating quartiles. It's very difficult. There's no Bubble operator for quartiles, and the plugins that say that they can do it were impossible to figure out. So I gave up. I'm not sure how to do that. I think I'm gonna have to use custom code for that. But if somebody knows how to calculate quartiles, please talk to me. I am curious. Math has always been a challenge in Bubble. It's not the best for complex mathematics. Visual language is not supposed to. Yes, sometimes it can be necessary to extend features by creating custom elements and actions on top of Bubble capabilities. This is the nature of a plugin, right? Like all plugins are built using API integrations or custom code. You need JavaScript if you're building plugins. So anyone that's ever built a plugin just built some, they put some custom code together, and because they needed it, and then they added it to the App Store. I'm not sorry, not the App Store, the plugin library in Bubble for other people to use. So we gotta be grateful about all the people that did that, because Bubble is a complete platform because of plugins. Most of the no-code tools do not allow to extend capabilities with traditional lines of code. That's true. I don't know of any. Well, like Integromat make/make. I hate that name because it's so generic. I loved Integromat. I love the name Integromat because if you were Googling something, a problem in Integromat, that shit would come up right away, take you right to the Integromat forum. Now I have to type in make, and I get all the wrong results. I don't like the new make. I don't like make. The user interface is a lot nicer, or the colors are nicer, I guess I should say. The user interface is pretty much the same. But it's I don't love the name. I don't love make. It's too generic. Doesn't stand out. When I tell people about make, they're like, "Wait, what's the name of it? Make? Make? That's silly." Anyway, my point about make, before my rant about the name, is that what the hell was my point? I forgot my point now. Oh, you can use custom code in that. You can run custom code in make also. But that's really, it's not, I don't know if you'd call that more of like an automation tool, almost like a script writer. It's definitely an automation thing, but I suppose like the traditional development comparison, right? Like the analogy there would be like if you're someone that writes scripts, like a DevOps team would, to automate kind of like repetitive actions. But yeah, you can run some custom code in there too. Bubble stands out on this point. It allows developers to run custom code to extend their app when they come across a limitation. Very true. Thus, developers can create plugins. There you go. I love this guy. I'm thinking the same stuff that he's saying. Thus, developers can create plugins to write and run custom code, JavaScript code, inside their applications. That said, there is a small chance you hit a hard limit in your projects. That's why we prefer referring to Bubble as a low-code platform, because it's possible to add code to enhance your app. That's true. I agree with this. I agree with Bubble as a low-code platform. I think that's a better description of the platform than saying no code. Even though I say no code all the time, and I'm a hypocrite, because I constantly say no code in all of my tweets and posts and, go no code and all this shit. It's only because I just I don't have a better word for it. Maybe low code. Maybe it's low code. Maybe I got to start saying low code. I don't know. Connect to external services and hardware through APIs. Connect to an external service and hardware through APIs. Sometimes applications need to collect data from external sources to trigger some actions. For instance, fetching social data, sending a transactional email, or reading temperature from a sensor. That's oddly specific. Reading temperature from a sensor. Bubble platform offers a powerful tool, the Bubble API connector, yes, to link applications to external software systems or hardware devices. Technically, you can almost connect to everything through APIs, such as an AI-powered engine to classify a massive set of images or controlling an IoT device. I don't even know what an IoT device. What's an IoT device? IoT device. Internet of Things. Physical objects with sensors. What the hell is this? Somebody explain to me what an IoT is. Describes the physical objects or sensors possessing ability software to other technologies that connect and exchange data. All right, I guess this is related to APIs. I don't really know. I don't know if I want to spend the time trying to learn this right now. But the point is, yes, you can definitely connect to most third parties. Most third parties offer their information through a REST API, and you can absolutely connect to that stuff with the Bubble API connector. It's pretty robust. The only time that I was unable to connect to a third party using the Bubble API connector was Morningstar, which if you're not familiar, it's a financial data. They offer financial data about like stocks and what's the best, like portfolio data, right? Like they're very expensive, but I think they're pretty much the big dogs in the financial financial data development space. And I couldn't connect with this service that they had called Bio Accounts because the response that came back from the API call was it was in a zipped file. It came back, the response was in a zipped file, and inside that zipped file, it wasn't JSON, it was XML, which JSON and XML are data structures, right? They're the way that it's a format so that applications can talk to each other. And XML is a little bit older. It's a little bit used more by like older institutions. Not a lot of, you won't see a lot of XML anymore, but this case I did, and I couldn't open up the zipped file that it came back in and then parse that XML, right? So that the application could understand it. So I had to use Integromat. At the time, Integromat, now Make. But at the time, it was Integromat, and I had to use that to basically open up the file, parse the information inside, and then send that back to Bubble. Which was, it took a while to figure out how to do that. I even went to Bubble at one point. I'm like, hey, is there any way to open up a zipped file with the API connector? And they pretty much told me no. They're like, you have to think about these third parties. Just take a look at these third parties. And I'm glad I did, because that's the whole reason that I found Integromat and started to learn how to build scenarios for situations like that. So while it took me like 3 months to figure that shit out, I was grateful because I learned a new skill in doing that. Or I learned a new tool, I should say. Integromat is a great tool. Make is a great tool. If you're not familiar with that one, there's so much that you can do with that. And there's so many integrations that you can do with Bubble using Make. Every time I've hit a wall in Bubble that I know just can't be done, or can't be done efficiently, I should say, in core Bubble, the solution has been in Make. So I'm very bullish on Make. On Make. I hate calling it that. Okay. IoT device. Yeah, we don't know what that is. Or I don't know what that is. Maybe you know what that is. Throw something in the chat if you know what an IoT device is, or can explain it to me simply. All right, connect to external databases. By default, application data is read and stored on AWS servers. Yes, Bubble Editor provides a tool, the SQL Database Connector, that allows developers to connect applications to external database and run SQL queries from within Bubble. Yes. The database is a growing concern for bubblers. I've never hit the limits of the Bubble database, and I've got an app with over 1 million records in the database, probably about 500 per. There's about 800,000 in one table, It's a heavy data app, there's no slowdown of the performance. If you're building your search constraints, or not constraints, if you're building your search expressions in an efficient way, and again, if you're not sure how to do that, I would check out Peter Amile's Ultimate Guide to Bubble Performance. If you're doing that, it's just as fast as a SQL database. So the thing with the SQL connector, I have used that before. And it's, if you really want to connect to a SQL database, if you're not comfortable using the built-in bubble database, it works. I've done it. It works just fine. I've never worked with like serious data sets with the SQL connector, but it works very much like the API connector. And that's almost my problem with it. It's like, why would that be faster and more performant than looking up to Bubble's built-in database, right? Like you have to do an API call to look up to an external database and retrieve that information. To me, that has to be slower. That has to be slower. So if you're thinking of like storage, like, oh, SQL, yeah, but you still got to get that information into Bubble. So maybe it's somebody who has like fully built an app on SQL. I can imagine that the only people that would want to do that is if you're just really comfortable working in SQL, if you're coming from a development background and you want to be able to write those SQL queries and you don't want to have to deal with bubble database bullshit or learn those expressions. But I have to think that if it has to call an external database to retrieve the information, that's going to be slower than what Bubble has built in. So I always question when people want to do that. Airtable is another one. Xano is another backend database that you can connect to. These are getting more and more popular. I think the limitation of lists to 10,000 records, like so a thing in Bubble. How do I explain this? How do I say this in a way that's not too ridiculous? A thing in a database, right? So a single row in a database can have a column that's a list, right? A field in the table that's a list. There can only be 10,000 records in that list, I'm told. I've never gotten to that limit. But that's a concern. Maybe that's another reason to look to an external data source, because you're worried about that 10,000 row or 10,000 list limit for a single database row. I suppose you have to build in a more, you'd have to restructure the data if you hit that limit, and maybe break it out into its own data type. I don't know. I've never had that much with the list, but who knows? I'm sure somebody's had that use case and needed to go to an external database because of that. Okay, scale the app as the business grows. Everyone is concerned about scalability. Most times before they have any traction, or even know if they're solving a problem that people care about, they're concerned about scale already. Shouldn't be concerned about scale if you're building an app for the first time. You should be worried about if you're actually solving anyone's problem. Once you know that for sure, then you can worry about scale. Many founders wonder if Bubble Engine will be enough powerful to support the scale of their app. That is true. Many founders do worry about that. Erroneously. First thing to consider, performance and scaling capabilities are highly impacted by how the app is built and optimized on the Bubble editor. Very true. This is very, very true. Again, I have to refer to the Ultimate Guide to Bubble Performance. There are good and bad ways to build expressions. The more searches you have, for example, the less performant your app is going to be. The more searches without constraints, server-side constraints, the less performant your app is going to be. Because Bubble is a programming tool like any other technology, developers need to follow good practices to ensure decent performances and provide good experience to end users. In other words, it requires a well-designed database model, true, optimized logic and database queries, true, and a functional user experience. All true. On the other side, Bubble Team is working hard on scalability and performance improvements and offer various affordable hosting plans to suit the application for performance needs. We're not going to talk about that misstep that they had with the pricing. We're not going to talk about that. That was scary. Everybody got scared. I got scared. There was a revolution, for those of you that weren't around. Or a revolt, I should say. When Bubble tried to change their pricing. All right, we are going to talk about it. Bubble changed their pricing and found that what we learned is that Bubble was, at the time, very out of touch with what their users wanted and needed, and what it was going to, how their pricing was going to reflect that. So they announced their pricing, and they took it back very quickly because of the backlash. The community was outraged. It was a scary time. But we got over it. They kind of clawed back that they did. I think they did do the best they could in terms of, like just backpedaling on that. I have to think that no one actually stopped using Bubble because of that. I don't think that's true. If you were serious about using Bubble in the beginning, like before they made that announcement, and then you heard that, I don't think that they lost any paying customers because of that. I just can't imagine that being the case, because yes, it was a misstep, but it's still Bubble. Like I think we also have to keep in mind that none of us would be able to do any of this if Bubble hadn't introduced themselves, right? Like they created something that we can all build on and bitch about it. We wouldn't be having anything to bitch about if they didn't do that in the first place, right? So let's remember that when we decide we want to exodus because Bubble is not doing what we want. Okay, on the other side, Bubble Team was working hard, blah, blah, blah. Where was I? On superior plans, you have more capacity. That means the app... Here's the thing. I still, for the life of me, don't understand the plans, right? Like, I don't understand what a unit of capacity is. I can't explain it. It's vague. Even Bubble's own explanation is kind of vague. So in my experience, the only way to know if you're reaching your capacity, you'll start getting emails and stuff. You'll see like in the the charts in your editor, you'll see that your app is reaching capacity, and that you probably need to add these mysterious units to your app to make sure that it is performing optimally and you have enough capacity to support the operations and the traffic that you're getting. But it's not completely transparent, right? It's not like, I almost wish that you could kind of know, like, all right, this is the traffic that I'm getting per month. What would be great, what would be my favorite thing, and I actually did tell them this when they were doing the user interviews for the pricing, is if you could charge by the workflow, the number of workflows that are being run in your app. Wouldn't that make sense? Wouldn't that make sense if like the number of workflows that are running in your app, that's how you charge, like 0.5% of 0.5 of a cent or something like that for a workflow? I don't know. To me, that would be the most optimal, because that seems like the fairest, right? Like the number of workflows, maybe the traffic, maybe something to a balance of the number of workflows and the traffic. Doesn't that seem like that would be the fairest way to charge a Bubble developer based on the number of workflows that they're utilizing and the traffic that they're getting? The number of workflows or even search queries. Obviously, I might be getting ridiculous here with how to track this stuff. But if it's a super expensive search query and you have hundreds of inefficient workflows, you have a lot because you didn't build the app the right way, that almost incentivizes better practices around how you build your app, right? So if the extent to which their pricing structure can incentivize good app building practices, I think that's what the community wants. I think that's what Bubble wants. Because you will scale as the app grows, you're going to need more and more, or your workflows are going to be run more often because people are running those operations. You're going to get the traffic. You're getting the traffic to your site. Bubble gets paid when you're getting paid. Hopefully it's a paid app. If it's not a paid app, then maybe that doesn't work. I don't know. I'm just speculating. These are the things that I think make sense to me, but who knows? In practice, there's always problems with every pricing methodology that you can think of. It's never going to be perfect, but certainly better than charging by the database row. That was a fucking nightmare. Okay. By default, we're on the other side. Bubble teams were sorry, I keep reading it. By default, Bubble apps share the same computing resources with all other Bubble apps on hobby and personal hosting plans. On superior plans, you can have more capacity, and that means the app can be more. If needed, Bubble Team offers a dedicated plan to their clients in case you benefit from an infrastructure always running on the AWS server, but isolated from other Bubble apps that lead to increased reliability and scalability. I've never built an app that was this big and needed this, so I wouldn't know. Bubble is an affordable solution to start a software project with limited computing needs. When it becomes necessary, it's easy to scale the infrastructure of your app for a fair price. I think that's a fair assessment, don't you? I think so. Manage data access and privacy. Bubble is an extremely open-ended platform compared to other no-code tools. That said, there are endless ways to develop an application in Bubble. Very true. Sometimes with bad habits. Also very true. By default, all data is open to the public when you create a Bubble app. However, Bubble Editor offers you some tools to configure data access in your app. Indeed, privacy rules gives the power to protect information to make sure it's safe. Yeah, that is true. I want to point you to this. JDev, YouTube. I want to point you to this interview. I keep coming. Everything that I'm reading here points me back to the to this interview between Jacob and Peter, and I want to put that in the link. Oh look, this is me. How cool. Let's go to JDev. He's one of my subscribers. Oh, he's right here. Check it out. JDev. Videos. Is your Bubble app secure? This is the one, people. Watch this. You learn a lot about privacy rules, and these are people that have been working in Bubble for a long time. They really know what they're talking about. But it all starts with the privacy rules. And you should not wait to build your privacy rules. You should not wait till you're launching to build your privacy rules. All right, what you can't do. I think we're getting into the what you can't do now. Build native apps. Bubble platform does not provide a specific engine so far to build and deploy native apps on application stores, where this is something that should be implemented in the mid-long term. Again, I don't think this is true. I don't think it's going to happen. That's just my prediction. I could be wrong, but I don't see, based on the philosophy of moving to web apps and not having to go through the app stores, I don't think this is going to be implemented. It is possible to build a mobile PWA or deploy mobile apps in the app stores. The techniques work around that we described above. Yes. Okay. So this is one thing you can't do with Bubble. Build like you can make a native app. I think what he's saying here is you can't. It's not part of core Bubble. You have to do these intricate workarounds to get your app on the app stores. Host an app on a private server or premise server. Bubble provides the hosting for customers on Amazon Web Services, AWS Cloud Servers, or dedicated instances. Currently, it is not possible to self-host a Bubble app on a private hosting server or a premise server. That is true. That said, cloud computing is becoming the norm. AWS is recognized as the leading cloud provider, greater than 50% market share. Wow, in terms of performance and security. So yes, that is true. You are locked into AWS when you are building an app on Bubble. You can't export the code. You can't host the app on a private server. And, you can make arguments for, whether that's a good or a bad thing. My guess is that if you do have a security background or a programming background or just an IT background in general, you might feel more secure if your app is hosted on a server that you have control over and that you can monitor. And that's fair, right? That's very fair. Unfortunately, Bubble is Peter said it best, a walled garden. You kind of have to work with their infrastructure. And they, for the non-technical people who are getting into Bubble, this is a godsend because you don't have to think about any of this shit. You don't have to think about hosting. Bubble's taking care of all that for you. But for those that, are a little bit concerned about security, but like they said here, they made a good point in this article. It's that it's AWS, right? They're if they go down, you don't think that or if AWS is hacked, like there's going to be, Bubble's a small part of that problem. There's a lot more to that. It would be, I don't know what it would be, but I have to think that there's some built-in security and, on AWS. And that's me trusting Amazon, I guess, who knows what's going to happen. All right, execute other languages in JavaScript. This is interesting. It is true that mobile developers can extend features of an application with custom code, but only JavaScript language is supported. The core engine of Bubble is written in JavaScript language. To date, developers will only be able to use JavaScript to build custom integrations on top of Bubble. Okay, so if you are a Python developer, for example, you're not going to be able to use that code. That's unfortunate. I wish it was more. There was a way. There's probably some plugins that will convert Python to, JavaScript or something. I have to imagine that someone's thought of that and that it's on the app on the plugin library, but I don't know that for sure. I'm just speculating. I've never had to use anything but JavaScript, so it's not really an issue for me. I learned JavaScript. I didn't learn. Let me rephrase. I started learning JavaScript because I worked with Bubble and there was certain things that I couldn't do in Bubble, but it's there was never a reason for me to learn anything beyond that. Maybe CSS and HTML, if I had a better knowledge of that, I might be better off. But those are pretty much the three fundamentals that you need for web development, web app development, and I've never needed anything else except those three. Develop complex algorithms. Bubble Visual Language is not the most appropriate tool to develop complex algorithms, especially recursive or looping operations on data. As a better option, developers can use or write custom algorithms outside of Bubble, hosted on Amazon, Lambda, for example, and use them by passing data through an API. For instance, a machine learning algorithm. I'd like to know how complex this algorithm is. Like, what's a really complex algorithm? I'd like to know the limit of that, right? I built recursive workflows that run operations on data. I've built, an algorithm that identifies trends in the stock market. That was a pretty complex mathematical operation that I built. But I'd like to know what that limit is. When would you need to host an algorithm outside of Bubble, and how, I just have questions about that. I don't know what that limit is. I'm not saying it's wrong. It may very well be true that at a certain level you have to host that algorithm outside of Bubble. I will say that for large data operations on large data sets, they time out. They tend to time out, right? So if I've got a very simple operation, if I've got a data set of 800,000 records that I need to make updates to, right? I need to change a field, a Boolean from no to yes. If I do that on 800,000 records, it's going to take a long time, first off, and second off, the operation may just time out. I think there might be a limit on it. But it seems random. It seems like the operation times out randomly without warning, and then I just have to kind of keep checking it. So that I with running those operations, those bulk operations, it's very strange. It's easier to modify the data by exporting the entire table as a CSV and then re-uploading it with the change than it is to run a recursive workflow, which I find very bizarre, very strange. Like, why would you need to? How is importing and exporting a CSV more efficient than a recursive loop? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. But it's been my experience. And even deleting, if you're going in and deleting, if you're deleting a million records, it's going to take a while. It's going to take a few days. I haven't found an efficient way to wipe a database. The best thing to do is have restore points, or points in time when the database was empty, I guess. But like that's very new. How long can you really do that for? And even on the most high level plan, you can only go back 365 days. So I found that so maybe there is some truth to what he's saying here. I don't agree with this exact wording of complex algorithms. Again, I don't know how complex it needs to be to have to host an algorithm outside of Bubble. I've just probably never had the use case. But I definitely agree that running bulk operations on data in Bubble's core features is a pain in the ass. It times out. It just doesn't do, it times out. It takes long, even if it does work the way you would expect. It doesn't feel reliable to me. And the fact that you can. The fact that importing and exporting CSVs is more efficient than the recursion, it's very strange. I just don't understand why that's the case. But who knows? Who knows? I know they're working on the data stuff. All right. Creating advanced video games. That's a fun one. Don't expect to create and run complex 3D or platform games with Bubble Engine, even though some of the smart users have managed to create little games that are worth a try, such as The Legend of Zeldinia. Yeah, that was pretty cool. This dude built a mini version of The Legend of Zelda in Bubble. I have no idea how he did that. I have no clue. J805. No Code Minute. I've never met this person. Who is this? No Code Minute founder. I always see his stuff. He's a coach on the Bubble site, but I don't know who he is. Assuming it's a guy. This looks like a guy. No Code Minute. So yeah, I mean, I don't know that Bubble was ever intended to be like, building games. Like, what's that big gaming platform? I can't think of it now. The one that all like the games was. I know that gaming is the programming language is mostly C#, and what the hell is the? It's gonna kill me. I don't know. I don't care. But it like I got to think that no one's thinking that they can build Halo on Bubble. It'd be ridiculous. Export code. This is a big complaint from people. Bubble apps can only be run on the Bubble platform. This proprietary model is justified by Bubble's business model. Thus, you cannot export an application as code. If you decide to move away from Bubble platform, you'll have to rebuild no-code application logic. You will only be able to export the application data and the custom code you added on top of Bubble. Question to think about is, why would you need to move off of Bubble? Interesting thought there. So, yeah, I mean, exporting the code is something that people complain about quite a bit. I think it gives people a sense of feeling trapped more than anything. Again, I don't know. I haven't had a situation where I needed to export the code. You can export the application as JSON. I've done that before, and it just spits out a huge JSON file, which can you convert that to like JavaScript? Like, wouldn't that be the way to do it? Like, if you could just convert that file to a JavaScript file? I don't know. I'm not sure if that's possible. But it does, that does make people feel uneasy that they can't export the code to their own app, because it is their app, right? Like, if I feel like it's my app, it's my application that I built and I have my paying users, there's a sense of ownership that I want to be able to do whatever I want with that code. I think that's what people's concern is. Again, for me, this is not the biggest priority, because I suppose I don't know what I do with the code, even if I could export it. Maybe give it to another developer, but I imagine that people who want to build or know how to code, this is probably something that they'd want to just look into and adjust, right? It's probably something that's like, oh, I wish I could just kind of like peek under the hood and see the JavaScript that's underlying these elements or these workflows and just adjust them to do what I want them to do, which would be cool. But it's there's the pros and cons of these platforms. But that's it. I think this article in general holds up. There's a couple of things that I disagreed with that I pointed out, but I think it's still a well done article. It was written 2 years ago already, which it feels like a lifetime ago. Pre-responsive engine, pre CSS Flexbox responsive engine. But I still think this holds up as what people are saying that Bubble can't do. So well written article. I think that is most of that is true. All right, I'm gonna check out for today. I will be streaming every weekday at 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Thank you for watching. If you're out there listening, hopefully you'll catch me next week. Throw something in the chat so I know you're out there. And have a great weekend, everybody. Thank you.